They say success has a sound, the roar of applause, the hum of luxury, the silence of peace. But sometimes it starts with something far humbler. Sometimes success begins with the sound of old shoes scraping against a cold pavement, tired, broken, and unnoticed. This is not just a story about poverty or pain. It's about a boy who walked through the storm, wearing shoes that had already given up, but a heart that never did. And if you've ever felt invisible, hopeless, or lost in the noise of life, then this story is for you.
Elijah heard the sound of his own footsteps. He was 6 years old, not the happy kind, not the kind that comes from sneakers squeaking on polished floors. No, it was the sound of old shoes slapping wet pavement, shoes 2 sizes too big, soles worn thin, the kind that lets you feel every rock beneath. It was raining that night. He and his mother stood beneath a flickering streetlight outside a bus station in Detroit. Their entire life, 2 trash bags. The security guard had just told them, "You can't sleep here." His mother whispered, "We'll be fine, baby. We just need to keep moving." But Elijah saw her eyes, tired, glassy, full of fear. That was the night Elijah learned what hunger sounded like. Not in his stomach, but in his soul, the way it hums through silence when the world has forgotten your name. They found a shelter eventually, a place where hope smelled like disinfectant and cheap soup. Elijah slept on a cot that creaked with every turn, staring at the ceiling, imagining stars that weren't there. He used to whisper to himself, "One day, I'll buy Mama a house." He didn't know how. He just knew he had to. Every morning he watched his mother leave before sunrise, cleaning offices, scrubbing floors, her hands raw and red by night. He wanted to help, but he was just a kid, small, quiet, invisible. At school, his clothes smelled faintly of bleach. Other kids laughed at the holes in his shoes, but he smiled anyway, because his mother always said, "Son, we might be broke, but we're not broken." He tried to believe her. By 16, Elijah had learned to hustle, mowed lawns, washed cars, worked nights at a gas station. He was smart, but life had taught him something sharper than intelligence: grit. Still, there were nights he wanted to quit, nights when the electricity was cut off again, and his mother would light candles and pretend it was just for fun. He'd sit beside her, listening to her hum old gospel songs, pretending not to notice the tears glistening in her eyes. One night he asked, "Mama, why do you still sing when everything's falling apart?" She smiled. "Because, baby, silence gives up. Singing means you're still fighting." He never forgot that. Elijah got into community college. Barely. He worked 2 jobs, janitor by night, cashier by day. He studied in the break room, using free Wi-Fi from the diner next door. Most days he ran on 4 hours of sleep and vending machine coffee. He'd look around campus and see kids driving cars worth more than his entire life. He never envied them. He just promised himself. One day, he graduated with an associate degree in business. No applause, no celebration. Just him, walking across a small stage, shaking hands with a dean who didn't know his name. But when he got home, his mother was waiting, a small cake on the table, baked from dollar store mix. She hugged him like he'd just won the world. That night he cried for the first time in years, not because he was sad, but because he finally believed it was possible. Then came the crash. His mother got sick, the kind of sickness that steals quietly, dollar by dollar, breath by breath. Hospital bills piled up like snow. He worked every shift he could, sold everything. But one morning the nurse called him in. He sat by her bed holding her thin, trembling hand. She looked at him and whispered, "You did it, baby." "You made it further than I ever dreamed." He shook his head, tears spilling down. I'm not there yet, Mama. She smiled faintly. You're already there, because you never stopped walking. Those were her last words. For months, Elijah drifted. He'd wake up, stare at the ceiling, and think, what's the point? He almost dropped out. He almost gave up. Until one evening, while cleaning the university hallway, he overheard a guest speaker say these words: success isn't about escaping your past. It's about using it as fuel. Something inside him shifted. That night, Elijah opened his old notebook, the one filled with dreams from the shelter days. He wrote, I'll build something that helps people like Mama, something that makes poverty less permanent. That's where it began. He started small, a social media page, sharing budgeting tips for low-income families. He posted every night after work. He spoke from experiences, not theory, and people listened because his voice carried truth. Then came an idea, an app, free, simple, helping users save little by little. He called it Step Up because that's what his mother always said. It didn't explode overnight. There were days with 0 downloads, days he wanted to quit, but her voice echoed in his mind. Silence gives up. Singing means you're still fighting, so he kept posting, kept improving, kept walking. 2 years later, Step Up hit 1 million downloads, then 5 million. Investors called, media noticed, hope became real. One morning, Elijah stood on a TEDx stage, the same quiet kid who once hid his hunger behind a smile, now in a tailored suit, holding a microphone, looking at thousands of faces. He began, when I was 6 years old, I learned what rain sounds like when you have nowhere to go. But I also learned you can walk through storms barefoot as long as you believe the road leads somewhere. The audience went silent. You could hear people sniffle. A few stood up and clapped before he even finished. After his talk, a young man came up to him. Sir, he said, voice shaking, my mom and I are homeless right now. But your story, it gives me hope. Elijah smiled softly. He handed him a card. Hope's a start, he said. Now let's get you a plan. Because Elijah had built his company on one promise. Every success must create another. He started the Grace Homes Initiative, named after his mother. Housing for single mothers, free workshops, education for families trying to rebuild. One winter night, he visited one of those homes. Snow was falling. Kids were laughing in the street. And for the first time, he realized the sound of old shoes no longer meant struggle. It meant progress. People walking towards something better. He stood there for a long moment, eyes wet, hands in his pockets. A volunteer asked if he was okay. He smiled and said, yeah, I just realized something. I can finally hear hope. Years later, when he was invited to speak at Harvard, he began his speech the same way, with the story of rain, the trash bags, and the flickering light. When he finished, he looked out at the audience and said, success isn't a miracle. It's not luck. It's the quiet decision to keep walking when your legs are tired, when the world laughs, when everything in you wants to stop. Every great story starts with pain, but it ends with purpose. So if you're walking through your storm right now, don't listen to the thunder. Listen to your footsteps. That sound means you're still moving. When Elijah finally bought a house, it wasn't a mansion, just a small home with a porch and a garden. He placed a wooden bench out front and carved 2 words into it, still walking. Every morning he'd sit there with his coffee, watching the sunrise, the same way his mother used to sing through the dark. And if you asked him how he did it, how he turned poverty into purpose, he'd smile and say, I never stopped listening to the sound of my old shoes. You can come from nothing and still build everything. You can lose everyone and still find yourself. You can cry through the night and still rise with the sun. Because pain doesn't end your story, it writes it.
He once walked the streets with soles so thin he could feel the stones beneath his feet. Today, he walks on stages that shine beneath his name. But he still keeps those old shoes, cracked, faded, and silent, not as a reminder of poverty, but of the path that built him. Because success isn't measured by what's on your feet, but by how far you're willing to walk when no one believes in your journey. So, if you're still out there walking, don't stop. One day, those broken steps will echo louder than applause. And that sound, that humble, beautiful sound, will be your own version of success.